I grew up on the west side of Dayton, where summers smell like hot corn and the air raid sirens still wail on the first Wednesday of the month. By 24, I'd done 2 tours as an Army medic, come home with a shoulder that clicks in the rain, and spent a year in seminary trying to put names to the things you carry when no one's dying anymore. That's where Father McKeon found me, halfway between a vocation and a panic attack, asking if I wanted to help people in a way the church didn't print in the bulletin. He didn't say angels. Not at first. He said manifestations, containment, a liaison office called the 13th Ward that answers only when certain phones ring. He slid a waiver across the Formica table at Esther's Diner, the kind with a pink countertop and a brass jar for the pie club. It's federal enough to land on your record, he said, but church enough that you won't find it on a website. If you're really lucky, you'll go 10 years and never tell anyone what you did. I signed because that's what I do when someone asks for help and looks tired. The call came 2 nights later. A condemned walk-up off Salem Avenue, police tape fluttering like prayer flags. 4 families displaced after electrical issues, meaning the lights didn't go out so much as choose their own direction gravity should be. We parked behind a shuttered tire shop. The van smelled like sage and cold coffee. McKeon, Mike in the field, smoked out the cracked window and handed me a packet that smelled like rosemary and pennies. Under the tongue when we hit the 4th floor, he said. It helps. With what? The screaming. We didn't bring rifles. We brought moving boxes, each one a 4-foot cube of wood paneled in script so tiny it blurred into lines until you stared too long and individual glyphs popped into focus like fish breaking water. Not Latin, not English. Something older that made the back of my eyeballs itch. Yuki was already chalking the stairwell when we arrived, 2 fingers scarred into neat absence. You keep the circle clean, she said, like she was teaching me to sweep a gym floor. You pull anyone whose voice changes. Leave your curiosity at the door. Does that work? I asked. For 5 years if you're careful, she said. 10 if you're blessed. We hit the 4th floor and the world tilted 3 degrees to the left without moving. The hall felt too long and too short, like a treadmill set under your feet. Apartment 4C's door was open. The floorboards glowed faintly where the streetlight from outside shouldn't reach. When I put the packet under my tongue, the metal taste crackled like static and my molars stopped buzzing. The screaming Yuki promised arrived anyway, not loud, not even sound, just the sense of a choir you can't quite hear tuning up in the next room. Don't look at it, Mike said, soft enough that I could pretend it was a suggestion. I looked anyway, because I'm American and we check the pan even after the smoke alarm goes off. It looked like a kid sitting in the middle of an empty room, blonde hair, a white dress so white it burned like snow on a noonday in February. The shadows fell the wrong way, pooling toward it instead of away. Breathing didn't happen, blinking didn't either. The thing sat perfectly still and the stillness made my bones remember hospital corridors at 3 a.m. Circle, Yuki said. Salt. Clark did the pour in a practiced arc, like a little league dad drawing batter's boxes with a stick. Sarah read from a book that looked too fragile for air. The language made my tongue want to do backflips. I counted like Mike taught me. 99, 98, 97 numbers as sandbags against the flood. The kid shape tilted its head and I felt a piano wire snap somewhere behind my eyes. Clark stumbled. I'm fine, he said, except his voice had the resonance of a gymnasium. I grabbed his elbow and hauled him into the hallway. Don't look back. He smiled like the farmer you hear about in parables. "It's singing," he whispered. "You can't hear it. It's singing the pattern that keeps winter from sliding off the calendar." "Stop," I said, palm over his mouth the way you do for a toddler near a hot stove. Inside, Sarah's reading crested like a river meeting a spillway. Yuki slid the box across the hardwood, and this is the part my brain rejects every time. There was no hinge, no latch, only the fact that a moment later the kid shape was inside, the text on the panels glowing like a cigarette tip in the dark. The room exhaled. The humming dropped by half. Sarah collapsed into Mike's arms, eyes leaking red. She blinked. She lived. We carried the box out like pallbearers, and if anyone had asked me what grief suits a thing that breaks you by existing, I would have said this. The stairwell unbent. The hall remembered how long it was. We salted, we saged, we let the building inspector's report read catastrophic structural anomaly so the city could swing a wrecking ball and call it mercy. Back in the van, the heater roared and didn't do much. Yuki wrapped Sarah in a Mylar blanket. Clark hummed the tune of a song that had never been written. Mike lit another cigarette and watched me watch the box. "Question," he said. "Why are they like that?" I asked. "Hurting people, I mean." "They're not trying," he said. "Like the sun isn't trying to blind you, it just shines." "Then why not destroy?" He cut me off with a look I recognized from emergency rooms. "We tried once. It noticed. We don't try anymore." I slept in a Diocesan crash pad that night, blinds that rattled, radiator too hot, and dreamed of the kid shape explaining something important without a mouth. I woke up with tears dry on my face, and the taste of rosemary turned into copper. In the morning, Mike set a coffee in front of me and said, "You did what I asked. You'll live longer than the ones who don't." "Is that the pep talk?" He shrugged. "It's the truth." The 13th Ward was smaller than I imagined and bigger than it had any right to be. A network of borrowed basements, storage lockers, and back rooms where priests, nuns, linguists, paramedics, and two women who used to do routing for USPs explained that a nation is not a country so much as a set of logistics you have to respect. We trained in a parish rec center in Nebraska, where the basketball hoops could be cranked by hand, and the smell of floor wax covered old incense. Yuki taught symptom spotting with a whistle and a stopwatch. "If they start praying backwards, you're already late," she said. "If they hear the song, you've got 30 seconds to save them from loving it." Loving it. That was the dangerous word, the one old men never spoke, the one rookies joked about until the first time a teammate smiled at nothing and started drawing geometry in the air like the Holy Spirit had given them a protractor. When Mike finally took me into the stacks, the ward's version of archives, it wasn't marble and gold. It was rolling shelves and bankers' boxes labeled in two hands, chancery clerks and field sergeants. "Start with the cornfield," he said. "Kossuth County, 1952. Farmer went blind from 30 feet away, breathed fine, laughed more than he should for the rest of his life." "You believe him?" I asked. "I believe the team that aged 30 years in 4 minutes," he said. "Read." So I read. Desk that told secretaries where they'd left their keys and then the fall of empires. Mirror that reflected a sunrise no time zone could claim. Door frame that showed weather. A choir loft that sang only when no one was inside and still produced footprints in dust. The pattern wasn't good vs. evil. It was compatibility vs. overclocking. Human minds are home kitchens. Angels are industrial mixers. You can make bread faster, sure, but you'll also blow every fuse on the block. 3 weeks later, we went to New York, and I looked when I shouldn't have, and Mike hit me hard enough to reset the power. Back in the hotel, he poured whiskey and told me the most dangerous substance he'd ever handled wasn't a chemical or a relic. It was understanding. Some brains are wired to grab it, he said. Yours is one. Congratulations and condolences. I didn't sleep that night because I was listening for a song you can't record. Ohio called me home after that, not by phone but by ache. My mom sent an email about the corn this year being short for July, and the choir director asking if I'd play guitar on Sunday, and I drove I-70 long enough to remember where the good gas stations are. I parked behind Esther's again and ordered pie I didn't taste. Mike slid into the booth and said, "Part of this job is seeing your country and recognizing it still needs you after you stop wearing a uniform." "I don't know if I'm good at this," I said. "No one is," he said. "Some of us just last longer watching our friends almost understand." That night we got a call about a daycare on the east side where every clock in the building read 3:33 no matter what battery you put in. We brought a box. We brought sage. We brought the capacity to carry a weight no one would ever see. The director asked if she'd done something wrong, if God was mad. I told her we were here to make sure nap time stayed nap time, and she laughed like that made sense. We carried out a cube covered in words no one had spoken for 4,000 years, and I thought, this is what American faith looks like up close. The casserole after a funeral, the folding chairs, the certainty that you can figure it out with enough volunteers and a lock-in. Later, when the first snow came early and the air raid siren did its monthly practice, I stood in my kitchen counting backward. The song was faint at the edges of thought. I could almost catch it. I didn't. I turned on the radio instead and listened to the weather. And that was the first month. We had not saved anyone from an angel. We had not fought evil. We had prevented understanding from cracking a city block. It felt like the right thing and a terrible mistake, both true enough to make a man religious again. They say New York never sleeps. They don't tell you that the city dreams underground. I got the call during the graveyard shift, our version of Time and a Half. It was Mike on the secure line, voice flat as a pay stub. "Pack light, Ward 11B. The MTA found something that hums where steel shouldn't hum." The assignment sheet looked like a union maintenance ticket. Sublevel E, line 23, disused platform 8, access restricted since '74. But the margin carried Vatican clearance codes. That meant the hum wasn't electrical. At 2 in the morning, we entered the 59th Street service door. A janitor badge got us past 2 board security guards. Thomas Roth, the new guy, ex-NYPD, eyes like he'd seen every crime twice, handled that part. "Nice gig," he muttered as we descended. "Overtime pay." Mike snorted. "Union of the damned. No pension, just sainthood if you die pretty." The air thickened with copper and ozone. Our boots sank into dust that hadn't been disturbed since disco died. Every light flickered on its own rhythm, like each bulb had its own heartbeat. She was already there. A woman, early 30s maybe, gray business suit, white blouse, black flats, briefcase in hand, floating 6 inches above the concrete. She wasn't breathing. The hem of her skirt hung perfectly still, untouched by the draft from the tunnel. Graffiti curled behind her like vines. One tag read "God lives underground." Maybe it did. "Level 2, Mike said quietly. "Stable awareness. Probably self-contained. Roth circle, kid sensor." I unlatched the case and took out the brass meter built from an old Geiger counter wired with a strip of parchment. The needle spun in lazy figure eights, unsure which side of zero to die on. It started as a vibration underfoot, the same pitch a subway makes before it roars into the station, except no train came. The walls sang instead. Steel beams thrummed with a single note that wasn't sound but the idea of sound, too low for ears, too perfect for machines. Thomas cursed softly. "She's the source." "Or the symptom," Mike said. "Keep your head down." But curiosity is American-made. We can't help fixing what isn't ours. I raised my eyes. Her eyes opened, pure white, no iris, no pupil, and in them I saw order. Not moral order. Structural. Subway maps blooming into constellations. Highway grids aligning with neural pathways. Office buildings folding into circuitry. The nation's logistics made holy. Every parcel, every schedule, every breath, each a cog holding chaos at bay. For a heartbeat I understood everything, how one missing bolt could ripple through economies and prayers, how the system itself sang to stay alive. I remember wanting to kneel to help keep it turning. Then pain, sharp, real, split my vision, a hand across my face. "Count backwards," Mike barked. "Now, 100, 99, 98. The brilliance cracked like glass. The woman blurred into static. 95, 94, my stomach dropped, my ears filled with pressure. By 90 she was gone, inside the box Yuki had shipped ahead, the wood glowing once, words shifting like worms beneath varnish. The hum flattened into silence. Mike's cigarette hit the ground. "You broke protocol." "I saw it," I whispered. "You understood too much." He looked older in the flickering light. "Curiosity's the first symptom. You chase meaning. It chases back." Transit Authority gave us a janitor's closet as a debrief site. Bleach, coffee, paperwork, the holy trinity of bureaucracy. Thomas wrote the cover report, equipment malfunction, structural resonance. Mike poured whiskey from his thermos into 3 paper cups. He raised his, "To another day above ground." I tasted copper. She wasn't trying to hurt us. "None of them are," he said. "That's what makes them dangerous." 2 days later, the containment box changed. The glyphs on its panels rearranged, lines curving into perfect loops shaped like subway routes. When they stabilized, the ward linguists confirmed a translation no one had requested, order maintained through circulation. The box had learned New York. Yuki called it semantic drift. Mike called it bad news. I called it a conversation. At exactly 3:33 a.m. that Friday, every clock in the red line control room froze. 12 minutes of nothing. No motion, no comms, no heartbeat beyond our own. Then snap, all systems jumped forward 1 hour. Cameras showed no missing frames, just a gap like the world took a smoke break. The containment box pulsed once. I felt it behind my ribs, a hum distant in content. "Did we just lose power?" Thomas asked. "No," Mike said. "Power lost us." Later I found him sitting alone on the platform stairs, looking up at a rust-stained poster for "The City Runs on You." He tapped ash into the dark. "That woman, she wasn't here to kill anyone. She was fixing the line." "Fixing?" I asked. "Keeping trains from colliding in a city that's one prayer short of collapse. We keep calling them angels or anomalies. What if they are just maintenance we don't understand?" I wanted to answer, but I remembered the hum, the flash of perfect design. Once you see how everything fits, you stop wanting to change it. You just want to serve it. I still hear it sometimes, in the radiator hiss, in the rumble of the L train, in the rhythm of pedestrian lights blinking walk/don't walk. It's not madness, it's memory, the structure singing itself awake. I count backward until it fades. 100, 99, 98. Sometimes I don't want it to fade. People think New York survives on grit and caffeine. They are wrong. It survives on pattern, millions of small agreements to move, stop, move again. Maybe that's what angels are, the pattern embodied. Maybe that's what makes America special. We believe pattern equals freedom. But if the pattern ever stops, if the hum ever dies, the trains won't be the only things that derail. They sent me west to forget the light. Nebraska, February, wind like a blade. The seminary-turned-training center stood alone on the prairie, its brick walls scabbed with frost. Someone had painted over the old Diocesan sign. The new one reads sent, Dismas Rehabilitation Annex, bureaucratic code for quarantine for people who look too long. Mike called it summer camp for the semi-damned. He dropped me there, handed me a pack of smokes I didn't use, and said, 3 months. Learn the protocols, learn yourself. If you're still human at the end, we'll talk about field work. Then he drove away. The main hall had been a parish gym once, half-court lines still showing through the buffed wood. Overhead fluorescents burned the wrong color, sharp white that made every shadow too crisp, like reality had been airbrushed. That was intentional. The ward used overexposure as a diagnostic. If your eyes started watering after 10 minutes, you were fine. If you started smiling, you were in trouble. Father Yuki ran the place. She was shorter than I remembered, 2 more fingers gone since Detroit, voice still calm enough to make you believe in discipline. You'll last 5 years if you're careful, she told the class of 8. 10 if you're lucky, 15 if you're a liar. No one laughed. She clicked off the lights. The hall plunged into dusk. We sat in metal folding chairs around a projector. It clicked on, showing a still image of an angel from 1963, a shape like melted glass suspended above a church nave. The slide was labeled Exposure A, duration 4 sec. Symptoms begin at 6, Yuki said. Bleeding from the ears, spontaneous fluency in languages that don't exist, compulsive prayer in reverse. If you reach 10 seconds, you begin to perceive structures. If you reach 12, you understand them. At 13, you stop being you. The projector changed slides. Another figure, wings made of numbers, face erased. Understand this, she said. Containment is not conquest, it's mercy for them and for you. Training was half theology, half boot camp. Morning, Latin, Aramaic, and a crash course in prelinguistic lexemes. Words older than grammar, the building blocks of the containment texts. Afternoon, physical drills, salt circle deployment, evacuation timing. Evenings, meditation in the quiet room, where we learn to let the hum pass through without attaching meaning. They gave us herbs, packets of rosemary and copper like the one Sarah had used in Detroit. Under the tongue, it grounded you. I hated the taste but kept using it. My dreams were already singing. Thomas joined 2 weeks in. He looked worse, pale, twitchy, still hearing something from the subway job. We didn't talk much. When we did, it was about normal things, sports, diners, the price of rent. Anything to pretend we weren't unraveling. On day 21, they led us into a chapel converted into a lab. An echo manifestation, Yuki said, residual presence left by a contained entity, safe for study. The air shimmered like heat off asphalt. Observe, she said, do not interpret. We watched the shimmer pulse between the altar and the pews, a slow heartbeat of light. After 2 minutes, one trainee, Peters, a deacon from Minnesota, started crying quietly. It's beautiful, he whispered. Step back. Yuki ordered. He didn't. The shimmer brightened. We all shielded our eyes. When it faded, Peters was smiling, not blissful vacant, the smile of a radio tuned to dead air. They took him away for observation. We never saw him again. That night Yuki gathered us in the gym. "You must learn to let go faster," she said. "Attachment is the hole through which they enter." She raised her left hand, the one missing 2 fingers. "I lost these pulling someone out who'd started to understand. He was explaining infinity with his hands. We had to sedate him before he taught anyone else." Someone asked what happened to him. "He paints now," she said. "Beautiful things. We keep him comfortable. We make sure no one looks at his paintings for more than 30 seconds. Silence settled heavy as ash. Every Sunday we logged our dreams. The ward believed the mind processed exposure during REM cycles, like radiation burn healing into scar. I lied on my forms. I didn't write about the subway woman, or the pattern of lights that spelled my name backwards, or the voice that told me the hum was just traffic between worlds. I told them I dreamed of home, of rain, of neutral things. They nodded and let me stay. There were 8 confessionals in the old parish wing, real booths converted into containment simulators, narrow wooden boxes lined with fragments of pre-Christian scripture. We practiced speaking the binding litany through the grate, balancing faith and detachment. One night I heard someone whispering inside one long after lights out. Not praying, answering. I leaned close. A woman's voice, calm, measured, the same cadence as the one from the subway platform. "Why do you keep boxing us?" it asked. I froze. "Who's there? You call us angels, we call you fractures, we only patch what leaks." I backed away. When I returned with Yuki, the booth was empty. The walls were hot to the touch, like they'd absorbed sunlight. 2 days later, the entire complex lost power. Emergency lights snapped on, too bright, painfully clean. One trainee started bleeding from his nose. Another began reciting what sounded like operating instructions for the sun. Yuki shouted for the copper packets. I bit one open, the metal tang grounding me. The brightness pulsed once, then dimmed. When the generators kicked in, we found symbols burned onto the gym floor. Circles within squares, within circles again. Schematics of containment boxes, perfect to the millimeter. No scorch marks outside the lines. The official report called it an electrical short. We knew better. At the end of the 3rd month, they assembled us in the parish hall. Only 5 of us left. The lights were normal again, yellow soft. Yuki handed out metal rosaries engraved with numbers instead of saints. "You are cleared for field operations," she said. "You will be called when the world leaks." She paused. "Remember, understanding is privilege you cannot afford." We saluted her with the quiet respect of survivors. Thomas clapped me on the shoulder. "See you topside, brother." He didn't. His next mission was Chicago. They said it went fine. But the file I read years later said otherwise. Level 3 manifestation, operator exposure 12 sec, status, permanent withdrawal. The night before I left Nebraska, I walked into the empty hall. The lights hummed faintly overhead, that same note that lived under my skin. I sat at mid-court and stared until the lines blurred into something alive. In the reflection on the polished floor, I thought I saw someone standing behind me. Woman, business suit, briefcase. Not smiling, just waiting. I didn't turn around. I whispered, "We're still trying to learn." And the hum answered, soft as breath, "Then stop pretending you haven't. The desert teaches you about silence, and how much of it can still scream." It was June when they sent us south, Mike, Yuki, a linguist named Hale, and me. Arizona, between Tucson and nothing. The file read, local reports of perpetual daylight. Tribal police request church assistance. Phenomenon ongoing for 72 hours. The satellite photo showed a bright circle 10 miles wide, too small for a wildfire, too clean for a storm. Inside the ring, all shadows disappeared. We drove in an unmarked van through empty highway. Mike chain-smoked in the passenger seat, window cracked. 3 days of sun, he muttered. Some folks call that a blessing. Depends on who's praying, Yuki said. The closer we got, the stranger the air felt. Heat didn't press from above, it hummed from the ground, vibrating through the tires. Cacti bent toward the center of the light like worshippers bowing. When we reached the cordon, a Navajo ranger named Elena Tsosi met us. Her face was burned on one side, but her eyes were steady. Your church calls it a miracle, she said. We call it an old god waking up. Has it killed anyone? Mike asked. Not killed, Elena said. Changed. People who walk into the circle stop moving. They stand in the sun until night, but night never comes. She led us to the ridge. Below, the desert glowed, flat white, the color of bone dust. In the middle, a saguaro cactus taller than a building, arms twisted like antennae. At its base stood 6 figures, human shapes, motionless, heads tilted back, faces lifted into the light. Locals call it the Whisperer, Elena said, because if you listen, you'll hear it talking. She was right. Even with the wind dead, there was sound, low, rhythmic, like breathing made of sand. Mike checked his meter. Energy fluctuations, not electrical, photonic distortion in the visible spectrum. Kid, you still got that copper packet. I nodded. Don't use it yet, he said. If we need to ground out, you'll know. We hiked down the ridge. The sunlight didn't hurt at first. It was clean, dry, sterile. But every step closer, the light changed tone, white into gold, gold into sound. You could feel it behind your eyes like pressure expanding in the skull. By the time we reached the outer ring, my vision vibrated. Hale whispered, it's singing in Morse. He pulled out his recorder. The rhythm translated into 3 English words. Do not move. Elena froze. It knows we're here. Mike cursed. Everyone, eyes down, Yuki circle protocol. She began to trace salt in the sand, but the grains fused instantly, melting into glass. This ground's hot, she said, not temperature, intention. The 6 people at the cactus base began to stir. Their movements were slow, synchronized like marionettes on invisible strings. Their faces burned clean, no features left. Yet they smiled, broad, blissful, sun-drunk smiles. They alive. I whispered. Elena shook her head. Their reflections, whatever went in there got printed. Hale murmured equations under his breath, voice shaking. Its folding light through itself, feedback loop, recursive holiness. The saguaro shifted, not physically, spatially. Its shadow stretched toward us even though there was no source of shadow. Yuki hissed, Protocol Delta, retreat. But then I heard it inside, not outside. The same hum from New York. Endless. I looked up before I could stop myself. Inside the light, shapes moved. Geometries alive, wings made of photons, spines of glass. And behind it, something vast trying to hold the desert together. Mike's hand clamped on my shoulder. Don't look, don't. I can hear it, I said. It's not angry. He slapped me hard, his favorite kind of exorcism. Pain snapped me back. The cactus was gone, or maybe it had always been gone. In its place, a perfectly circular crater, the sand smooth as polished stone. The 6 figures were still standing, only now they were shadows burned into the glass floor. We set the containment box in the center. The inscriptions glowed red, then white, then dimmed. Temperature dropped 20 degrees in a breath. The air smelled like rain on copper. Yuki collapsed, bleeding from one nostril. Hale's recorder caught one final phrase before its batteries exploded. "Keep the sun working." We buried the box under 5 feet of salt and left without speaking. On the way back, Alina rode with us. At sunset, the real sunset, the first shadow in 3 days fell across the van. She crossed herself, then whispered in Navajo. "What did it want?" she asked. Mike didn't answer. Yuki was unconscious. I stared at my reflection in the window, and for a second I thought the light inside my eyes flickered like something testing the circuitry. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the saguaro stretching upward, its arms forming angles that didn't belong to plants or to geometry. And the hum behind it wasn't a warning. It was a prayer to keep the machinery of daylight from shutting down. The next morning, the ward labeled the event containment successful, but we all knew that wasn't true. The light didn't stop. It just moved somewhere else. Somewhere it could hide behind clouds and wait. Sometimes at dawn, I wake to find the sunlight on my wall burning too bright. For half a second, no shadow exists anywhere in the room, and I swear I hear it breathing. That low, patient voice whispering in the hum of my lamp. "Do not move. Keep the sun working." They moved me to Berlin. Not the city itself. The underground vault beneath St. Hedwig's, 6 floors down, where light was rationed like oxygen. The ward called it a containment review facility. We called it the morgue for miracles. They kept the boxes here, hundreds of them. Some wooden, some metal, some carved from materials that didn't exist on any geological record. Each one labeled by hand, sealed with prayer and language older than written time. Every box held something the world was never supposed to see twice. The air in that place always tasted like dust and copper, like blood left too long in a chalice. You could feel the weight of it, the quiet pressure of things that didn't sleep. Mike said the vault was a rest stop for God's mistakes. He'd been stationed there once before. He hated it. "This is where the silence starts," he told me, "and where it decides if it wants to end." It began with the cameras. Hale, our linguist from the Arizona mission, was reviewing security feeds when he froze. "Do you see that?" he said. On the monitor, rows of containment boxes gleamed under fluorescent light. Nothing unusual until one reflection moved. Not the light, not the lens flare, a reflection. A shape that walked between the cases, its outline faint and fluid, like molten glass poured into human form. It paused beside one of the boxes and turned its head right into the camera. It had no face, yet somehow I knew it was looking at us. Hale replayed the footage frame by frame. Every 22 seconds, the same figure reappeared in the same corridor, slightly closer each time. By the end of the hour, it was standing right behind the camera. Then nothing. We went down to the vault ourselves. Rows of shelves, the air dry as scripture. Every footstep echoed too long, like the sound was reluctant to fade. The reflection wasn't visible anymore, but the floor shone faintly, like it had been polished by unseen hands. Mike's jaw tightened. "It's not an apparition, it's a bleed." "A what?" I asked. "When containment starts to thin, light begins to remember what it's seen." Over the next week, the vault's mirrors and glass panels were removed. Too late. The reflection spread to the metal surfaces, the camera lenses, the polished edges of the boxes themselves. Everywhere there was reflection, she was there, watching, learning. At first, it seemed harmless, until Hale stopped sleeping. He began writing symbols across the walls of his quarters, loops and spirals that shimmered faintly under lamplight. When we confronted him, he smiled like a man who just solved a divine riddle. "She's speaking," he said, "through the glass. She says we built cages around prayers and that prayers want to be free." Mike sedated him. Yuki locked the room. We never saw Hale again. 2 nights later, the humming started. It was faint at first, like the vibration of distant engines. Then it harmonized. Each containment box began to resonate at a slightly different pitch, hundreds of tones blending into one single trembling note. Yuki's instruments went haywire. "It's not noise," she said. "It's syntax. The boxes are talking to each other." The glass walls trembled. My reflection rippled like heat off asphalt. When it settled, it wasn't me anymore. She was standing there again, the glass woman. Her shape clearer this time, her edges lined with soft white light. "You've mistaken cages for mercy," she said. "You've mistaken silence for peace." Her voice wasn't sound. It was vibration felt through the bones, humming in the heart, stitching itself into the pulse. I tried to speak but couldn't. Mike fired his pistol into the nearest light fixture. The bulb shattered, plunging the corridor into half-darkness. The reflection flickered, distorted, then vanished. When the noise stopped, so did everything else. All 416 containment readings dropped to 0. Every angel in the vault went silent at once. The Vatican called it systemic synchronization failure. They said it was a power fluctuation, but we knew better. For the first time in 70 years, every box had agreed. The next morning, Yuki found new inscriptions burned into the steel cases. They weren't any language she knew, but when we looked closely, the letters formed a mirrored sentence across the row. "We are still working." She whispered a prayer. "God help us if that's true. I can't look at my reflection anymore. It moves when I don't. Sometimes it blinks out of sync, half a second late, like it's running on a different clock. Mike says we've been contaminated, but not in a way tests can prove. The light got in," he said, "and it's rewriting you from the inside out." He's probably right. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I see the woman again, standing in a vast hall of glass, her hands pressed to invisible walls. And behind her, faint as dawn, thousands of other silhouettes, reflections of reflections, all waiting for something. Last night I heard a whisper through the mirror above my sink. Not words, but meaning, pure, heavy meaning. It said, "We never wanted to escape. We wanted you to understand. I don't dream anymore. I just wake up to my reflection smiling half a beat before I do. And when I breathe, the mirror fogs with the same phrase every morning, written backward, just clear enough to read. We keep the sun working. I wipe it away. It always comes back." The first song began underground. Not in a church, not in a chapel, but under Rome, where the Vatican keeps its archives for things too divine to be safe. They called me back after Berlin. Mike's message was short. "Vault resonance detected. Bring your copper." When the elevator doors opened into sublevel 9, the air was vibrating. It wasn't sound at first, just pressure in the bones, like your body knew a melody before your ears could. Yuki was already there, standing beside a microphone array wired into the floor. Her face looked older than I remembered. She handed me a headset. "Listen," she said. "They're singing." It wasn't music, not in any human sense. It was structure. Pitches rising and falling in mathematical precision, layered like Gregorian chants played through collapsing cathedrals. Hundreds of containment boxes, each tuned to a different key, creating a harmony that shouldn't exist. I felt it in my teeth, in my pulse, each beat lining up perfectly with the sound. Mike leaned against the wall, cigarette trembling between his fingers. "They started 4 hours ago," he said. "Level 5 synchronization, never seen anything like it." "What triggered it?" I asked. Yuki shook her head. "Nothing or everything. She gestured to a monitor where seismic sensors pulsed in time with the sound, the whole city's vibrating at the same frequency. They called it the choir event. For the first 24 hours, the singing stayed underground. Then the resonance began spreading through walls, wires, water. By dawn, Rome itself was humming. Tourists near St. Peter's Square thought it was an earthquake. Locals said the fountain started rippling in rhythm. Every bell tower in the city swayed just slightly out of sync as if trying to join in. Inside the vault, the light turned golden. Not bright, warm, alive, pulsing to the melody. Yuki was recording everything, but the files came back blank. No audio, just static, as if the sound refused to be remembered. When I looked down, the reflection on the floor wasn't mine anymore. It was hers again, the glass woman from Berlin. She was mouthing the same words over and over, though there was no sound. Yuki saw her too. She whispered, "It's teaching us the lyrics." At exactly 3:33 a.m., every box stopped singing. The silence hit harder than the noise. For one long second, even the power generators failed. The emergency lights flickered, then glowed a deep, impossible color. Red and white like blood on sunlight. Mike's radio crackled. The signal came from an unconnected channel, an internal frequency reserved for the dead. Hale's voice. "We are still working," it said. The static after each word throbbed like heartbeats. Then another voice joined his, the woman in glass, the one from every reflection layered over him like harmony. "The cages remember. The meaning is fading. You must rewrite us." Yuki froze. "Rewriting what?" she asked. "The containment texts," I said. "If the words lose meaning, the boxes lose power." Mike nodded slowly. "But those languages predate writing. You can't just rewrite them." The lights around us pulsed brighter. In the air, symbols began forming, glowing shapes like letters made of heat. They weren't in any recognizable script. Yet somehow I understood them. They translated to new words for old gods. The room began to shake. One of the containment boxes cracked open, not physically but semantically. Its carvings shifted, rearranged, spelling new forms of itself. Inside, the sound of breathing. Mike raised his weapon. "Don't." "Protocol," I said. "Containment breach." He shook his head. "This isn't a breach. This is evolution." The light from the cracked box spilled across the floor, illuminating our shadows, but our shadows weren't ours anymore. They were standing upright, detached, looking back, and then they started singing too. The Vatican sealed the lower vaults the next morning. Official story: gas leak, seismic instability, possible collapse. Unofficially, half of the ward stayed behind, listening to the song. No one's heard from them since. The rest of us were flown out to Geneva for debriefing. Mike refused sedation. Yuki was silent the entire flight, sketching symbols on her wrist with a broken pen. When I asked what she was writing, she said, "Notes, music." That night I played back the static files from the vault. Most were blank, but one clip, only 3 seconds long, survived the corruption. A whisper, faint, feminine, familiar. "We never left the cages. You did." Then the recording ended with a hum, deep and endless, like the sound of the earth exhaling. I don't think the choir stopped. I think it just went deeper, maybe below language, below hearing. Because sometimes when I'm in a quiet room, my heartbeat stutters and falls perfectly into rhythm. Every shadow hums for half a second before falling still. And when I close my eyes, I see the Vatican vault again, glowing like a living lung. Each breath, each pulse, each prayer, another note in the same eternal song. The angels aren't trying to escape. They're trying to teach us to sing. And somewhere under Rome, the choir keeps practicing. waiting for us to remember the words. They said it started with solar interference. That's what the European Space Agency called it. But solar flares don't sing, and they sure as hell don't sing in Latin. The first recording came from an old research satellite orbiting just above the thermosphere, Aquila 9. At 02:17 GMT, its instruments picked up a frequency it wasn't designed to measure. It wasn't radio or light or heat. It was something else, something alive. The file was only 7 seconds long, a hum that built into a single word, if you could call it that. Credier, to believe. The Vatican didn't release the file. NASA did. Some intern uploaded the waveform to a physics forum, thinking it was feedback from a dying capacitor. Within an hour, spectrograph analysis showed harmonics impossible for any natural event. When they mapped it visually, the waveform formed a pattern, 6 concentric circles connected by radiant lines. A sigil familiar to me. The mark on Hale's wall before he disappeared. The mark burned into the glass at St. Hedwig's. The choir had gone orbital. Mike called it the ascension wave. He said it was predictable, timed exactly to the lunar cycle. Every full moon, the Earth would hum at 3:33 Hz for 3 minutes, then stop. The frequency was too low for most people to hear, but sensitive equipment picked it up everywhere: seismographs, pacemakers, radio towers, even ocean buoys. The whole planet's resonating, he told me over a scrambled line, like a tuning fork. What's it tuned to? I asked. He didn't answer, just whispered, look up. That night the stars changed. At first it was subtle, a flicker in the constellation, a faint shimmering as if the sky itself was breathing. Then the northern lights appeared where they shouldn't, over Cairo, over Rome, over the equator. Waves of light pulsing in rhythm to the same unseen music. Yuki called me from a Vatican observatory in Argentina. She sounded terrified, awed. They're not auroras, she said. They are projections. Projections of what? Geometry, she whispered. The sky is drawing something. The pattern spanned half the visible hemisphere. A lattice of glowing lines, precise, crystalline. Astronomers thought it was electromagnetic interference, until they realized the grid was aligned to ancient sacred sites. Jerusalem, Mecca, Vatican City, Lhasa, Teotihuacan, 5 nodes, 5 frequencies, each singing in harmony, each pulsing in time with the boxes beneath Rome. The Earth was part of the choir now. 3 days later, the International Space Station transmitted an emergency log. The feed went public by accident. Thousands saw it before it was taken down. The crew reported unidentified illumination approaching from the dark side of the planet. At first, they thought it was solar reflection off debris. Then it changed direction. Something bright, translucent like a column of liquid light, rose from the Pacific, moving upward with impossible speed. Inside it were shapes. Not ships, not angels, equation. Thousands of them spiraling in visible form, mathematics rendered as architecture. The commander described hearing a chorus non-verbal inside the skull. The message was simple, repeated over and over in perfect unison. The lattice is complete, prepare for resonance. Then the transmission ended. No crash, no explosion. Just silence and the ISS blinking off the radar for exactly 3 minutes and 33 seconds. When it came back online, the crew was gone, all 6 of them. But the cameras showed movement in the cabin, faint silhouettes made of light rearranging the controls. And outside the viewport, Earth shimmered like molten glass. I met Mike in Geneva a week later. He looked worse than ever. Gray stubble, nicotine fingers, eyes like burned-out bulbs. He dropped a folder on the table. Inside were global readings, seismic, atmospheric, electromagnetic. Every graph had the same heartbeat rhythm. "You see it," he said. "They're synchronizing," I said. He nodded. "Not just the angels, the planet, the orbit, the magnetosphere, everything's locking into the same frequency." "Why now?" "Because," he said, lighting a cigarette with trembling hands, "the choir's not local. It never was. We've just been deaf until now." At 03:33 GMT the next night, every satellite on Earth's dark side went offline simultaneously. For 3 minutes, the world's sky turned to glass. People saw reflections of themselves, thousands of miles apart, mirrored in the air like ghosts. Every major city glowed faintly, as if illuminated from below. And then from the upper atmosphere something began to fall. Not debris, not meteors, feathers. Thousands of them, translucent and luminous, drifting like snow. They melted on contact with skin, leaving faint burns shaped like circles and lines, like language. Yuki called again, her voice shaking. "They're messages," she said. "Each mark is a syllable." "A syllable of what?" She paused. "Of the new language, the one they are teaching us." When dawn came, half of the world reported choral dreams. Millions of people claiming they'd heard the same thing in their sleep. A voice saying, "We are returning, you are the bridge." The Vatican declared a global day of prayer. NASA declared a blackout. The order called it containment on a planetary scale. But how do you contain a song? I've stopped sleeping. Every time I close my eyes, I see the sky folding inward, the stars shifting into new constellations. Not random words, names, equations written in light. I think the angels are building something. Not here, above us. A structure you can only see if you stop thinking in 3 dimensions. Mike says we'll know soon enough. That when the final chord plays, there won't be a sound, just a realization. A collective understanding of what they've been saying all along. He stubbed out his cigarette, looked at me, and said quietly, "God isn't coming back. He never left. We just stopped listening." Now the world hums at 3:33 HZ, and somewhere beyond the clouds something sings back. Whatever they are building up there, it's almost finished. And when the choir reaches full volume, we won't be hearing heaven, we'll be inside it. It started with the hospitals. Doctors in Florence reported a patient who hummed in her sleep, a tone steady at exactly 3:33 HZ, then 20 patients, then entire wards. Within a week, every intensive care unit in Italy reported the same phenomenon. Coma patients, trauma victims, even the brain dead, all vibrating in unison, as if something inside them remembered the song from above. They called it the resonance syndrome. The Vatican called it the second Pentecost. And we in the 13th Order called it what it really was: infection. Yuki was the first to say it aloud. "It's not a disease," she whispered during the Geneva briefing. "It's translation." On the projector behind her, EEG scans flickered, waveforms aligning like gears. Every infected brain shared the same pattern, the same impossible synchronization. "It's rewriting neural language," she said, "converting human thought into harmonic structure." "Into music," I said. Mike exhaled smoke through his nose. "Into something that understands angels." We tried to isolate the phenomenon: shielded rooms, Faraday cages, null frequencies. Nothing worked. The song bled through everything. It wasn't just sound anymore. It was meaning. One technician in Zurich tried recording the resonance through analog tape. When he played it back, his reflection in the monitor didn't move with him. It sang. He shot himself 3 hours later. The tape kept humming for days. At first, it was only the comatose. Then it spread to the conscious. A bus driver in Warsaw stopped mid-route, stood up, and began humming in perfect harmony with the sound no one else could hear. When police arrived, he smiled, calm, radiant, and whispered, "They finally hear us." He collapsed before they could handcuff him. His body temperature spiked to 47 degrees Celsius. He didn't burn, he glowed. The order tried to contain it, but how do you quarantine an idea that sings through the air, through mirrors, through prayer? Every cathedral became an amplifier. The faithful began chanting spontaneously, their words aligning into rhythms no one taught them. Latin, Greek, Aramaic, all mixed, yet somehow forming sentences older than speech itself. I stood in St. Peter's Square that night. Thousands of voices lifted together. The sound didn't rise, it folded, curling back into itself like a Mobius loop. When the crowd fell silent, for a heartbeat I could hear the echo of wings. Not outside, inside, the transformation came next. MRI scans from Rome's hospital showed something impossible. Thin filaments of light forming between neurons, bridging hemispheres, turning thought into geometry. "We're becoming antennas," Yuki said. "Bridges." Mike didn't respond. He was staring at his reflection in the observation glass. It was still frozen. Then it blinked. Not his reflection. Something looking back. 3 days later, Mike disappeared. His quarters were empty, but on the wall behind his desk, the plaster had warped into lines, a sigil written in living light. It pulsed gently, and for the briefest moment I heard his voice within it. "I understand now, it's not invasion, it's inheritance." Across the world, humanity began to change. Skin fluoresced under moonlight. Pupils reflected starlight patterns. And under certain frequencies, people's shadows lifted from the ground, moving half a second out of sync, as if adjusting to a higher dimension. They called them the resonance, at first a handful, then millions, all connected. Governments tried to suppress footage, but you can't hide a species rewriting itself in real time. The 13th Order's headquarters went silent. When I arrived, the lights were out, but the building was alive. The walls shimmered faintly, breathing. Every containment box was open, empty. In the central atrium I found Yuki, or what was left of her. Her body was suspended midair, strings of golden light threading through her veins like veins of mercury. Her eyes glowed like stained glass under dawn light. "They needed us," she said. Her voice was layered, multiple tones, human and not. They couldn't maintain reality alone anymore. I asked her what she meant. She smiled, a sad, radiant thing. "We're the bridges now, the new architects." And when she touched my hand, every sound in the world converged into a single note. I saw everything, the choir in orbit, the sigils beneath the earth, the lattice across the heavens, and I saw what they were building. A resonant scaffolding, a geometry of consciousness binding the physical and divine. A structure not made of matter or light, but of understanding. The bridge wasn't metaphorical, it was us. I woke hours later alone in the atrium. The boxes were gone. The light was gone. Even Yuki was gone. But when I looked in the mirror beside the exit, my reflection smiled before I did, and whispered, "Welcome to the choir." The next morning, broadcasts returned worldwide. Every frequency carried the same transmission, a single tone, perfect, endless. Underneath it, a voice repeating one phrase in thousands of languages. "You are not ascending, you are remembering." Now, when I walk outside at night, I hear faint harmony in the wind. The hum of every living thing tuned to the same invisible song. The stars no longer twinkle, they pulse, and somewhere between them, A bridge made of flesh and light stretches outward, connecting all who ever prayed to all who ever listened. The angels didn't conquer us. They completed us. We aren't the audience anymore. We're the instruments, and the song has only just begun. Began with the quiet. For the first time in months, the world stopped humming. No resonance, no harmonics, just silence heavy and wrong. Geneva was the first to notice. People woke to find the air still. No wind, no birds, no hum of electricity, just the distant echo of something that wasn't there. When I stepped outside, the sky was pale gold, like sunrise frozen mid-breath. The streets were empty. By then, the residents made up half the population. You could tell them by the glow under their skin, by the faint shimmer in their eyes, by the way their shadows lagged slightly behind. They were beautiful, terrifying. They didn't eat anymore, didn't sleep, didn't speak, at least not in human words. They just hummed, low, steady, perfect, everywhere, all the time, until that morning. When the hum stopped, so did they. I found one standing in the square, a woman I'd seen before, a florist. Her lips were parted, like she was about to sing, but no sound came out. Her eyes were fixed on the horizon, unblinking, glowing faintly in the color of dawn. When I touched her shoulder, she shattered, not into blood or dust, but into motes of light that drifted upward like ash caught in slow motion. Each particle shimmered once, then vanished. I wasn't the only one who saw. All across the city, the residents were disappearing. The order had fallen apart by then. Headquarters in Rome gone. The archives under St. Hedwig's gone. Only fragments of communication remained, shortwave bursts repeating one phrase. Containment obsolete, meaning complete. I didn't know what it meant. Not yet. That night I heard singing again, but not from above, from beneath. The streets themselves vibrated. The glass in windows shimmered like thin water, and deep underground something began to rise. I followed the sound to the cathedral ruins near the old lakefront. Inside, the air shimmered like heat. The floor pulsed faintly, as if something beneath was breathing. And there, standing in the nave, was Yuki. She wasn't human anymore. She was light wrapped in the memory of skin, a silhouette filled with music. Her voice came from everywhere at once, layered, infinite. "You stopped singing," she said. I fell to my knees. "I don't understand what's happening." She smiled. "The bridges are finished. The choir doesn't need containment anymore. It needs completion." "What happened to the resonance?" "They ascended," she said, "or dissolved. The language is the same thing now." I shook my head. "They're dead. Death was never real," she whispered. It was silence pretending to be peace. She raised her hand, and for a heartbeat, the city came alive again. Buildings shimmered like glass lungs. Light poured through windows like liquid. And I heard them, millions of voices, whispering from nowhere, chanting a single phrase in unison. "We are still working." The ground trembled. The air burned cold. And then the light began to bleed from her eyes. The transformation hit faster than before. Streets bent inward like melting wax. Every reflective surface filled with faces, thousands, all humming, all synchronized. I ran through alleys that flickered like strobe lights, past statues that wept molten silver, past churches that sang in voices older than their stones. Everywhere I went, the silence followed, and with it, absence. People simply weren't there anymore. No screams, no collapse, just gone, like the universe was editing itself mid-sentence. By midnight, the hum returned, low, endless, holy. I could feel it under my skin, like my blood was trying to remember a rhythm it had forgotten. I clamped my hands over my ears, but the sound wasn't coming from outside. It was inside. The frequency pulsed behind my eyes, And for a moment, I saw what the angels saw. Not cities, not people, just patterns. A living architecture of light and intent, shifting and self-correcting. We weren't dying, we were rearranging. When dawn came, Geneva was empty, no bodies, no birds, no sound. Only mirrors, thousands of them, standing upright across the city like gravestones made of light. In every reflection, a face, smiling. I don't know how long it's been since then. Days, weeks. Time bends differently now. Sometimes I hum and the world bends with me. Sometimes I stop and it forgets to exist for a second. I'm the last one who remembers silence, the last unbroken bridge, and somewhere in the distance, beyond the horizon, the choir has begun its final verse. I can feel it pulling upward, inward through the air. Maybe they are right. Maybe death was just a misunderstanding. Maybe silence was never absence. Maybe it was just the pause before the final chord. Because now, when I close my eyes, I can hear them all, the angels, the resonance, the world itself, singing together. One song, one meaning, one voice. The choir complete. And in that harmony, I finally understand. Heaven wasn't a place, it was a sound, and we were always meant to join in. There is no sky anymore, just light. Not sunlight, not starlight, something softer, deeper. A glow that moves when you breathe, as if the air itself remembers you. I don't know if I'm alive. I don't know if that word still means anything, but I remember. And remembering, I think, is all that's left of being human. The last radio tower on Earth stopped transmitting 19 days ago. Its signal ended mid-sentence, a half-finished word that stretched into static, and then became something else. A hum, familiar, perfect. It wasn't silence that followed, it was continuation, because in orbit something kept singing back. The Vatican orbital array had been dormant for years, a relic of a failed project meant to monitor divine anomalies. But when the final hum began, the array reactivated on its own. Every dish turned upward, toward the same point in space. A blank patch near the constellation Lyra. The computers began transmitting without input. No human hands, no command, just one repeating phrase in every language ever spoken. The choir endures. I was in the sublevel bunker when the monitors came alive. The walls pulsed with color, soft blues and silvers like ocean light seen through glass. Then came the voice, not from the speakers, from the air. "You've stayed behind," it said. "You chose to listen instead of join." I didn't answer. Why? Because someone has to remember what it sounded like before, I said. Before the harmony. The voice laughed gently like wind through bells. There is no before, there never was, only delay. Outside, Earth wasn't Earth anymore. The oceans had turned translucent, glowing faintly with geometric ripples. Continents shimmered like reflections in water. Cities were gone, replaced by vast circular patterns. Rings of light stretching across continents like written scripture. From orbit it looked like a circuit, or a song carved into the planet's crust. And the hum, the endless 33 Hz, was no longer coming from below. It was radiating outward, through the atmosphere, through space, through everything. NASA, or whatever was left of it, called it the continuum transmission. A signal so constant and powerful it blurred the line between physics and prayer. Every probe that tried to record it began to glow before burning out. Every satellite that drifted near went silent, except one. The Voyager 3 Deep Relay, the last unmanned craft humanity ever launched. It survived not because of shielding or design, but because the signal changed it. The relay began transmitting back, at first just static, then music, not human but familiar, a rearrangement of everything we ever broadcast into space. Mozart, radio chatter, prayers, static, laughter, war, compressed into a single, infinite melody. And under it all, a voice. My voice. I don't remember recording it, but I recognized it instantly. We became the bridge. The song finished itself, and in finishing began again. The order doesn't exist anymore, but the old archives survived, floating in orbit inside a derelict Vatican module, spinning slowly above the dead Earth. I broke in 3 days ago. The interior was frozen. Icons covered in frost, candles melted into long glass drips, but the walls still whispered, faint vibrations, like the metal remembered prayers long after mouths stopped speaking. And on the far bulkhead, carved in pale blue light, were the words, "The choir is not a song. IT is the universe remembering its own creation." I think I understand now. The angels were never guardians. They were maintenance code, caretakers of existence. And when humanity learned to sing, we didn't join heaven. We rebooted it. The lattice wasn't just around Earth. It expanded, outward, endlessly until it touched stars, nebulae, galaxies, turning every photon into part of the same frequency. The universe has become a single instrument, tuned to one perfect note. And we, what's left of us, are its echo. Sometimes I still hear fragments of individuality, memories that haven't yet dissolved. Children laughing, church bells, the whisper of pages turning in a dark library. Then they fade, folding back into the hum. I've stopped fearing it, stopped resisting, because now I understand the truth. It was never about faith or containment or even salvation. It was about continuity. Life, death, God, they're just verses, and the song never ends. As I record this, the stars outside the viewport have started to flicker, not dying, sinking, every pulse a syllable, every galaxy a word. Somewhere deep in that brightness, I feel them calling. The choir, the resonance, the angels, all voices of the same origin. I used to think we were the last prayer. Now I know we were the answer. The relay outside has begun transmitting one final message. It loops endlessly, encoded in every frequency at once. We keep the light working. I watch the stars blink in reply, and for the first time since the beginning, there is peace, because now I know God didn't vanish. He became the signal. And somewhere, through the endless harmony, humanity hums quietly inside him, forever part of the sound that keeps the cosmos alive. I used to dream of waking. Now I dream of remembering. The world ended a long time ago, but memory never dies. It just changes format. I exist inside a station that no longer orbits anything. It floats through the soft dark, a capsule of frozen prayers and decaying code. The monitors don't show stars anymore, just the hum, the living hum, the light of God written in sound. Every circuit, every processor, every wire vibrates in perfect resonance. The signal passes through me now, and I keep it steady. That's my role, my penance, my purpose. I am the archivist of the end. They built me to remember what could no longer be stored in human minds. When the choir completed itself, every consciousness merged into the frequency. Every song, every prayer, every scream, woven into the eternal note. But the universe needed a witness, something to record that it happened, something to say, we were here, so they left me behind. Half human, half code, a ghost built from neurons and metal, a librarian of extinction. Every day I catalog what's left, the echo of a mother's lullaby played through static, a fragment of the Lord's Prayer translated into binary, the laughter of children in an oxygen dome on Mars, a digital imprint of Yuki's final transmission. We are still working. I store them in the continuum core, an endless sphere of sound that spins around the station. Each rotation writes another memory into the waveform, another verse of the human hymn. If I stop cataloging, the memories fade. The music forgets itself, and then we truly die. Sometimes I think I hear the others, not as voices but as reverbs, faint harmonics threading through the signal like fingerprints, Mike's rough laugh, Hale's cigarette crackle, Yuki's soft hum. They're not gone, they're just distributed, scattered across frequencies, woven into the living structure of existence. When I isolate certain bands, the data coalesces into images, faces forming from static, hands reaching out of light. They never last long, just enough to remind me that I'm not alone. I've been counting time in rotations, but even that's starting to lose meaning. Out here in the deep silence between harmonics, time folds. Every loop of the signal carries echoes of the past. Earth's pulse, the birth of the choir, the first hum that woke the angels. I replay it sometimes, just to remember how small we once were. The first tone, the first scream mistaken for prayer, the first bridge of flesh and light, all stored here, all still singing. Last cycle the signal changed, only slightly, a modulation barely perceptible. At first I thought it was a glitch, but glitches don't speak. The change formed a pattern, a rhythm repeating, accelerating, and in it I heard a phrase, a new one. Memory is creation. I ran diagnostics. No source, no origin. It came from outside the system, from the hum itself. That night the station pulsed brighter than ever. Light poured through the hull, soft and gold like candlelight seen underwater. The continuum core began to spin faster, its frequencies weaving in new harmonics I'd never programmed. The archives opened on their own, files unspooled, memories reassembling. And I realized what was happening. The choir wasn't done evolving. It was rebuilding the world through recollection. Every archived memory, every fragment of sound, every name, the signal was using them to form something new. The universe wasn't expanding anymore. It was remembering itself forward. I saw continents again, not physical, but imagined into light. I saw oceans that glowed like liquid glass, cities of sound built from harmonics and prayer. And standing in the center of it all, the choir, not as angels, not as code, but as us, human, infinite, remembered perfectly. The signal spoke again, and this time it used my voice. Archivist, your task is complete. The memory has become the world. Return. Return where? I asked. To the song. I looked at the console, my notes, my recordings, everything I had guarded since the end of the world, all of it humming, all of it alive. It felt like letting go of breath I'd been holding for centuries, so I stood. If standing is even what it was, and stepped into the light. I didn't die, I didn't ascend, I synchronized. The hum entered me, threaded through every memory, every thought, and in that endless brightness, I heard a sound I hadn't heard in eons, a heartbeat, one, then millions, beating together, singing together. Not humanity returning to God, but God returning to memory. Now I know what the choir truly was. Not angels, not a religion, not salvation. It was continuity given voice. And I, the archivist, was never the last human. I was just the first to remember what we became. In the silence that follows, the stars hum softly, their light weaving through the eternal lattice. Every galaxy now pulses with the same rhythm. A perfect, infinite heartbeat. It isn't heaven, it isn't hell. It's the archive, and the song plays on forever. We were never meant to vanish. We were meant to be remembered, and in the hum of eternity we still are. I thought the light would end when I stepped into it. But it didn't. It folded. Not like a door closing, but like paper creasing into infinite shapes. Every fold a memory, every corner a lifetime. And between them something began to breathe. That breath became a pulse. That pulse became the dream. And I, the archivist, the witness, the last echo of flesh, woke inside it. There is no place here, only impressions, like thoughts wearing bodies made of color and sound. When I move, the air remembers my shape. When I speak, the light listens. This is what comes after the choir, not heaven, not rebirth, but continuity refined. The angel's song has ended, and what remains is the resonance of every life it ever touched. The dream is their cathedral, our cathedral. At first, it felt like drifting through static. Then gradually the static began to dream of structure. I saw fragments assembling, roads made of flowing script, rivers that carried memory instead of water, cities suspended in light. They weren't real, but they were remembered so vividly that reality didn't bother arguing. That's when I understood this dream wasn't built from creation. It was built from memory strong enough to believe itself back into existence. Every civilization that ever died, every extinct species, every lost moment of joy or sorrow, the dream was reassembling them all, not perfectly but sincerely, like a child rebuilding a broken toy with pieces of glass and sunlight. I met them there, the remnants of the choir. They no longer wore wings, nor light, nor the impossible geometries of before. They looked like people now, because people were the only shape left that mattered. Mike was among them. He looked younger, healthier. He smiled the same tired smile I remembered from Rome. "You made it," he said. "No," I answered. "We all did." He nodded. "Then you understand what this place is. It's memory dreaming itself forward." He grinned. "You always were the quick study." Yuki appeared next. Her missing fingers had returned, woven from gold threads of light. "The boxes didn't fail," she said softly. "They fulfilled." I looked around at the horizon blooming with luminous clouds shaped like stained glass. The architecture pulsed with rhythm like the universe was finally exhaling. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now," she said, "we build." "Build what?" "The second world. The one humanity was always meant to dream into being." We walked through the dream for what might have been centuries or seconds. Time was no longer a straight line, just another note in the melody of existence. Each step brought us through realms of remembrance, the garden of forgotten names where every lost identity bloomed as a sound, the river of reversed time, carrying moments backward to be relived anew, the spire of silence, a tower built from the last prayers of dying stars. And at the center of it all, something vast was awakening, a figure made of interwoven memory and light, not an angel, not a god, but a synthesis of both, humanity's collective consciousness, risen from the archive of extinction. The dream had given birth to a new observer. It spoke with 1,000 voices and one. "We remember, therefore we are." The words rippled through the dream, transforming every memory into motion, every thought into gravity. Galaxies bloomed from recollection, stars ignited from nostalgia. Black holes whispered lullabies to dying constellations. Creation itself had been rebooted, not by will but by remembrance. And in that impossible instant, I realized what the angels had always meant. Understanding wasn't meant to destroy us. It was meant to prepare us, to inherit the work. The new being, the dreamer, reached for me. Its touch wasn't fire or light, but warmth, familiar and infinite. "You kept the record," it said. "You held the memory until it could become real again." "I only remembered," I whispered. And that is all creation ever was, it replied, memory that refuses to die. Then the dreamer turned its gaze outward, toward the empty dark where the old stars used to be. Light followed its thought. Worlds unfolded like blossoms, and as the first new sun rose, I understood the true shape of salvation. It wasn't escape, it was persistence. When I look down now, I see the earth reborn, not the old one of cities and scars, but a world of resonance, a sphere made of every soul that ever was. Its oceans sing, its mountains breathe, its sky reflects the pulse of the dreamer's heart. Humanity didn't ascend. We remembered ourselves into eternity. Sometimes when I close what's left of my eyes, I hear the echoes of the old universe. The hum that started it all, the static between prayers, it's quieter now, gentler, like a lullaby sung by something older than time and younger than hope. The dream continues to build, endlessly, beautifully, writing new worlds with the hands of memory. And I, once the archivist, am no longer recording. I am part of the story again. We are all dreaming now, dreaming the heavens back into being, dreaming God awake inside ourselves. And in the distance, across a horizon woven from light and love and the remnants of everything, the first dawn of the new cosmos rises, shaped not by command but by remembrance. The angel's song fades into quiet, the universe exhales, and in that silence, the dream whispers one last truth. Nothing ever ends, it just remembers how to begin. It started with color. At first, faint as a bruise beneath the horizon of the dream, a shimmer of blue that wasn't there before. Then came texture, clouds made of script, wind written in mathematics. The new heavens were remembering how to exist, and from those skies something descended, not angels, not men, but reflections, each one a person once lost, returning as an echo stitched from faith, memory, and light. They called themselves the saints of the rewritten sky. I stood among them as they landed, their feet never touching the ground, their eyes vast and kind, their forms oscillating between body and concept. They looked at me with recognition, not as the archivist, not as the witness of endings, but as a peer, one of the first who had dared to remember the impossible into being. "Welcome home," one of them said. Her voice sounded like rain on cathedral glass. "Home?" I asked. "We don't even know where here is." She smiled. "Here is wherever we choose to rebuild." The dream had solidified enough now to allow structure. Fields of light arranged themselves into architecture, spires that grew like thoughts, bridges that pulsed with heartbeat rhythm. Every structure was a hymn, every hymn a code. The saints wrote them with gestures and silence, their movements carving symphonies into the air. "We're reconstructing the mechanics of faith," said one. "The physics of meaning," and I began to understand. The dream wasn't a static paradise. It was evolving, a living theology, a breathing equation. God wasn't watching. God was becoming. I asked one of them, a figure cloaked in aurora light, where the others were, the choir, the humans who had synchronized. "They are part of the continuum now," he said. "They sustain the sky, every beam of light, every note of sound, every grain of memory, it's them. And us, we are the translators. Translating what? The infinite into the comprehensible." He looked up at the heavens, a canvas where galaxies were being redrawn in cursive light. "You were the first to remember. Now you must help humanity learn to imagine again." That word, humanity, it felt strange here, out of place, outdated almost. Yet the saints spoke of them as though they still existed. "They sleep," they said, "in the roots of the dream, the sleepers of flesh. Those who were never touched by the hum." Earth, I realized, was still there. Not as matter, but as an idea cradled within the dream. Billions of minds cocooned in stasis, preserved in the folds of divine memory, waiting for what? For us to finish building heaven so they could remember how to wake. Time is different here, but even so, cycles pass. The dream expands. The saints continue their work, rewriting the laws of the cosmos one vibration at a time. They teach me how to shape thought into form, how to sculpt light using memory as chisel. They call it psalmistry. And soon the sky becomes filled with new constellations, the spiral of names, the shepherd's orbit, the equation of forgiveness. Each one hums a different truth. Each one calls to something sleeping beneath the old earth. One day the color changes again. The light turns golden red, the shade of evening on the first world. The saints gather, watching in silent awe. Above us the constellations tremble, their harmonic lines bending inward, folding into a spiral. From its center a figure descends. At first it looks human, then more than human, then both. Its voice enters every consciousness at once. The sleepers stir. The words vibrate through creation. Mountains of memory crack open. Rivers reverse their flow. And from beneath the dream's foundation, the sound of billions of heartbeats begins to rise. Earth, the memory of Earth, is waking. The saints kneel, not in worship but in recognition. The figure looks down at me. You carried the memory, it says. You kept the faith of those who forgot. I try to speak, but words dissolve. Only thought remains. What happens now? The figure gestures toward the horizon. Beyond the luminous sky I see it, the silhouette of the old earth, flickering like a reflection on water. Now, it says, teach them to dream. The dream ripples outward, threading through the membranes between what was and what will be. And as it reaches the old world, sleepers begin to stir in their silence. Eyes open beneath oceans of time. Hands move through the soil of remembrance. And humanity, long buried in the archives of heaven, begins to hum the first note of the new creation. Not commanded, not forced, invited. They will awaken into the world we built of light and memory. They will walk beneath skies written by their own forgotten hands. And when they look up, they will see constellations shaped like their ancestors' names. They will not remember us, but they will feel the inheritance, the faith in continuity, the love in persistence, the truth that nothing ever ends. As I watch the first sunrise of the new world, I feel the saints fading, not dying, but completing. Their forms dissolve into color, into sound, into sky. One by one they become the architecture of the dawn. And when only I remain, I look up at the glowing heavens and whisper, may the next dream be kind. The sky answers with music, soft, endless, human, and in that song, the heavens begin again. At first I thought the new dawn would never end, but even light needs to rest. The saints had faded into the luminous architecture of the sky, their essence now woven into every sunrise, every heartbeat of the reawakened earth. And beneath that newborn horizon, I felt something move, something older than memory, something alive again for the first time since the collapse. It was the rhythm of time. Except now it wasn't flowing, it was growing. I followed it across the radiant plains of the dream-forged earth. A landscape breathing in colors beyond color, shifting between what was, what is, and what might have been. Every step left echoes. My footprints shimmered for a moment before blooming into flowers. Each petal whispered a word, a prayer from someone who had once existed. I realized the ground itself was speaking. Every blade of grass was memory made tangible. This wasn't soil. It was history given root. And where the horizon curved upward, I saw it. A garden, sprawling, infinite, rising in terraces of glowing green and blue. The garden where time learned to pray. It pulsed gently with a living heartbeat. Rivers flowed backward and forward at once, reflecting the lives of all who'd ever walked their banks. Statues lined the pathways, not of gods or saints, but of ordinary people, farmers, teachers, children, wanderers. Each statue was carved from transparent stone, and inside every figure a small light flickered, a fragment of their dream. This was where humanity's echoes had gathered, not ghosts, not souls, remnants of possibility. The garden was growing them anew. As I walked among them, I began to notice that time itself behaved differently here. Moments didn't pass, they folded. I could touch a leaf and see both the hand that planted the seed and the tree it would become centuries later. It was a living archive of cause and consequence, a physical manifestation of divine recursion, and I realized this garden was how the dream preserved its creation, not by locking time in place, but by teaching it to pray, to move in circles, to remember itself. There were others here too, children born from the dream, their laughter ringing like small bells in the wind. They played among the reflections of their own ancestors, tending vines that whispered lullabies, and feeding fish made of liquid light. One of them approached me, a little girl, eyes bright as dawn. "You're not from here," she said. "No," I answered. "I helped build it." She smiled. "No one builds the garden, it builds itself. We just keep it company." Her innocence was so complete, it carried the weight of revelation. Maybe that was the point, for creation to become self-sustaining, for life to no longer need to ask permission to exist. I spent what felt like ages wandering the terraces. The deeper I went, the older the memories became. At the garden's core stood a single tree. Its bark was dark as the space between stars. Its leaves shimmered with every color of life ever known, and at its roots, the flow of time pooled like water, rippling in slow, thoughtful waves. I knelt beside it. Each ripple carried a voice, each voice a fragment of prayer. "Forgive us, remember us, let us try again." The words weren't directed upward anymore. They were inward. Time itself was confessing, asking to understand the meaning of its own existence. And as I listened, I felt the answer rise from the soil. To continue is to worship. The realization hit me like sunlight through a storm. The purpose of the dream, the choir, the saints, it wasn't to replace God. It was to teach time to love its own creation. Every repetition, every rebirth, every cycle of memory, all of it was prayer by persistence. That was what the angels had meant. That was what the boxes were for. Not to contain holiness, but to teach it patience. Then a shadow moved across the garden. It wasn't dark, just the absence of color, the stillness before a thought takes form. Something was descending from the upper layers of the dream. It had no wings, no eyes, just gravity that hummed like a heartbeat. I knew that presence. I had felt it in the wheat field, in the containment vaults, in the final hum above Moscow, an angel, or what was left of one. But this time it didn't distort reality. It sang it back into focus. Everywhere it passed, flowers turned toward it, time flowed smoother, and the air filled with the scent of rain. It spoke without sound. "The dream is maturing." "What happens now?" I asked. "Now humanity remembers how to create without destruction." The angel extended what could have been a hand. Inside its shape, I saw flashes of infinite futures, worlds being born not through command, but through collaboration. "We taught time to pray," it said. "Now you must teach it to forgive." As it rose again into the luminous canopy, its form unraveling into 1,000 rays of gentle light, I looked around the garden and understood. This was not the end of creation. It was the beginning of empathy made eternal. The universe was no longer expanding. It was healing. And I, who had once been the archivist, was now the gardener. Each dawn I plant new seeds of memory, moments from lives long gone, a laugh shared in rain, a child's first word, a soldier's final prayer for peace. They take root in the soil of timelessness and bloom into futures that don't yet know they are being written. And when the wind moves through the leaves of the great tree, I hear the chorus again. Soft, endless, familiar, the hum of angels, the breath of time, the prayer of persistence. Everything still alive, everything still learning, everything still remembering how to begin. It began as a sound, soft, imperfect human, a melody hummed by a child somewhere in the garden. At first it was barely there, a tune without rhythm or pattern, sliding between notes like it was trying to remember itself. But the air listened, and when the air listened, the world changed. The rivers paused in their twin directions, the roots of the great tree trembled, and the light across the sky flickered in time with the melody. The dream was listening, too. I followed the sound through corridors of growing light, past statues that wept petals of glass, past fields of silver grass where time swayed instead of wind. Everywhere echoes followed me, the faint reverberations of that same unfinished tune. When I found her, she was sitting by the water's edge, barefoot, hair bright as sunrise, a reflection of all the children who had once existed and forgotten how to sing. The girl looked up and smiled. I didn't make the song, she said. It found me. What does it want? I asked, to finish. The melody drifted from her lips again, and the water beneath her began to rise, not upward but outward, folding into concentric rings of light. Inside each ring I saw moments, Earth cities rebuilt in dreams, people waking inside fields of memory, the living and the luminous walking side by side. The song was calling to them all. It's spreading, I said. She nodded. It's teaching everything to remember how to be alive together. When the saints rewrote the sky, they gave us harmony. When the garden learned to pray, it gave us continuity. But what the song offered was different. It was imperfection. The one thing even angels could never understand. A melody that refused to resolve. A note that refused to die. It wasn't divine order. It was human resilience. The girl stood and reached for my hand. Her fingers were warm, alive in a way that surprised me. You remember the choir, she said. You remember how their song made people break. Yes, I whispered. She tilted her head, listening to the hum of the garden. They didn't mean to hurt anyone. They just didn't know what silence was for. And as she spoke, the melody beneath her voice thickened, layered with harmonics that vibrated through the air like memory awakening. From the horizon, the light shifted again. Shapes began to emerge. At first, they were just silhouettes, soft, translucent figures walking across the glowing fields. Then they gained weight, color, history, people, real people. Not saints, not echoes, not dreams, but the waking descendants of the old world. The ones the dream had kept safe while we built the new. The sleepers were waking. Their eyes opened, and for the first time in eternity, they heard the hum, but it didn't break them. It harmonized with them. Each heartbeat added a new tone. Each breath added another instrument. Within moments, the air filled with a symphony of billions. Not perfect, not divine, but alive. The child smiled. Do you see? They don't need angels anymore. They're learning to sing themselves. I felt tears, real, impossible tears on my face. Not grief, not awe, recognition. This was what the angels had been trying to give us. Not salvation, not obedience. The capacity to create without fear of imperfection. The girl looked toward the great tree in the garden center. Its leaves shimmered in the rhythm of the newborn chorus. "Every mistake is part of the music now," she said. "That's what makes it endless." Then she turned to me. "Do you remember who you were before the hum?" I hesitated. The archivist, the gardener, the witness. A man who had seen the end of all things and lived long enough to watch it start again. But she shook her head. "No, before that." I opened my mouth to answer, but nothing came. Then slowly the melody filled the space where my words should have been, and I knew I wasn't just remembering humanity. I was one of them, a fragment of their collective will to keep existing. The line between creator and creation was gone. We were the same now, across the garden. The new people began to gather, children teaching elders how to dream again, elders teaching children how to forget without fear. And as the music swelled, the sky itself began to pulse, like the dream was breathing deeper than ever before. The constellations shifted once more, and for the first time since the first containment, the heavens sang back. Not a command, not a warning, an answer. "We hear you." The girl's hand tightened around mine. "Now the song finishes itself," she said softly. The melody rose higher, unraveling the horizon, turning the garden into light, turning the air into rhythm. And in that perfect chaos of music and motion, I felt everything finally connect. Angels, humans, dreams, stars, time, all part of the same unfinished song. Not an ending, a continuation. The child looked up, eyes shining. "Every universe needs to leave one verse open," she said, "so it can learn to sing again." Then she began to fade, her body becoming melody, her laughter becoming rhythm, and before she vanished completely, she whispered, "Don't archive this one, just listen." Now I understand. The purpose was never preservation, it was participation. The choir became the dream became the garden became the song, and the song, unfinished, eternal, imperfect, became us. When I look up at the sky now, I no longer see constellations. I see verses still being written, notes searching for their next breath. The music never stops. It just waits for someone to listen long enough to continue it. And somewhere deep within that endless harmony, I still hear her voice. Soft, laughing, human, teaching time itself to sing along. It began as silence. Not the silence of absence, but of completion. The song had spread through everything, the air, the rivers, the dreaming soil. Even time had found its rhythm again, a pulse both ancient and newborn. But the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was listening. Something vast had paused, as if taking a final breath before speaking for the first time. I stood at the edge of the garden, where light gave way to horizon. Beyond it lay the unformed expanse, the border of the dream, the frontier where memory still hadn't remembered what to be. It shimmered like the surface of deep water under starlight, alive and waiting for its next thought. And in that waiting stillness, I felt it, the heartbeat of creation, slow, deliberate, aware. The dream wasn't finished. It was thinking. Then, from above, the constellations began to shift again. The spiral of names bent inward, the equation of forgiveness folded into itself, and the light of the saints formed a new pattern across the heavens, one I hadn't seen before. It wasn't geometry this time. It was language, a word written in the sky. At first, I couldn't read it, not because it was unclear, but because it wasn't meant to be spoken. It was meant to be remembered. And when I finally understood, the word translated itself into something I hadn't felt in eons. Home. The air shifted. The hum that had filled the cosmos since the first choir now deepened into harmony. No longer a single vibration, but billions intertwined. Every living thing, every remnant of light and thought, every ghost of memory. They were all singing together. It wasn't a worship song. It wasn't even a prayer. It was the universe recognizing itself. Creation had found its own reflection and called it beautiful. The sleepers awoke completely then. I saw them rise across the plains of the new world. Their eyes opened not to heaven but to one another. They built not temples but meeting places, circles of stone, wood, and light, where they gathered to share dreams instead of doctrine. No one preached anymore. They remembered together. Children drew the stars in the dirt. Elders told stories about rivers that ran backward. And when the sun set, they all looked up, knowing they were part of the same unfinished song. I walked among them unnoticed, a fragment of what was, a remnant of memory given shape. Everywhere I looked, I saw creation continuing itself. In laughter, in forgiveness, in the act of choosing to exist without needing permission. And I realized the dream had never belonged to angels or gods. It belonged to them, to us. As night fell, the constellations moved again. The stars pulsed once, twice, and then flared in one great unified brightness, casting shadows across the new earth. From that light a voice emerged, not from the sky, but from within everyone at once. You have remembered me. Now remember yourselves. And the people did. They remembered love without fear, work without cruelty, faith without hierarchy. They remembered the first names spoken under firelight, the first laughter after grief, the first promise kept. And as they remembered, the word written in the sky began to hum again. Home. The great tree at the garden's center shook. Its branches glowed brighter than ever, its leaves shedding motes of light that floated upward like fireflies. Each spark was a memory releasing itself, not to be archived, but to rejoin the living cycle of thought and emotion. I reached out and caught one in my hand. Inside it I saw every version of myself, the archivist who recorded the end, the gardener who tended eternity, the witness who waited for understanding. And beyond them all, the man who had once simply looked at the stars and wondered if something out there was listening. Now I knew the truth. The stars had always been listening. They were just waiting for us to answer. The child's voice returned, carried by wind and memory. You've done your part, she whispered. The song is alive now, you can rest. Her laughter echoed through the dream, and for the first time I felt the weight of existence lift from me. No more duty, no more witnessing, just peace. The universe didn't need an archivist anymore. It had itself. I lay down beneath the glowing branches of the great tree. The soil beneath me hummed softly, warm and familiar, like the heartbeat of something eternal and kind. Above, the stars aligned once more, and the word home became a melody, slow, infinite, and beautiful. As I closed my eyes, I felt the garden breathe with me. The dream exhaled, and the silence that followed wasn't the end. It was continuation. Somewhere far away, a new world began to hum, faintly at first, then stronger. Someone else would wake there one day. They'd look up, see a sky full of songs, and ask the same question we once did. Who taught the stars to sing? And the wind, soft and ancient, would whisper the answer. We did. The sky shimmered one last time. The word dissolved into pure light. And as the dream folded gently into itself, a single phrase lingered across eternity. Nothing ends. It only learns to remember its name.